Just as a disclaimer, we will be recording this seminar today. So if you do not want your face to possibly be included, feel free to turn your cameras off. And if you have any questions, either from the pre-class activity, signing up for an NCBI account, if you had any issues, or if you have any questions throughout the presentations, feel free to put them in the chat. We will be monitoring, or you may unmute and interrupt whenever. There will be lots of pauses for activities and feedback, so feel free to speak up at any time. So hopefully by the end of today's session, we'll be able to add citations to your My Bibliography page. You will understand the different sections of both an NIH and an NSF Biosketch, and you will have had a chance to get a start on building a primary NIH and NSF Biosketch using the SciENcv. So first off, what is a Biosketch? It is a formatted resume. It is now required for all NIH, AHRQ, and NSF applications for research grants. And NIH applicants are encouraged to use the SciENcv tool, which will become a requirement starting in May, the end of May of next year, 2025. And NSF applicants are already required to use the SciENcv tool as of October of last year, October 23rd of 2023. So before we get into SciENcv itself, you will need an NCBI account. So if you have had the chance to get that set up, and if you have an ERA Commons account, you will want to link it to your NCBI account as well. So this was our step one, and hopefully everyone has had a chance or is currently in the process of getting that set up now. So the second step will be adding your publications and presentation information into your My Bibliography, which we will go over. And then Tess and I are going to walk through the third step of how to input the information from your My Bibliography and your most recent CV, which hopefully you have a copy of, into a primary biosketch using the SciENcv. So just a quick show of thumbs up or hands. If you have your ERA Commons, were you able to get it linked to your NCBI? Yep, all right, seeing a couple thumbs up. Okay, if you don't have an ERA Commons account now, when you apply for your first NIH grant, you will get one. So the instructions on how to link the ERA Commons into your NCBI account are here. This is the same as adding a new linked account when you log into NCBI. So if you log in using your ORCID or you log in using your ERA account, it's in the same place. And as you can see, you can have multiple linked accounts in your NCBI accounts. Okay, so the best way to add your citations in a biosketch in SciENcv is by adding them to your My Bibliography first. This is another one of the NCBI tools on that dashboard. And in fact, you should add all of your relevant publications and presentations to your My Bibliography, because while there are limits to the number of publications and presentation citations you can have in your NIH Biosketch, the only link that you are permitted in a Biosketch is to a My Bibliography page that has been made public. So having the most up-to-date information and the most complete record of your research products in your My Bibliography is to your benefit. So how do you access the My Bibliography? When you are logged into your NCBI account, there are two ways. If you are already on the dashboard page, click on the Manage My Bibliography link, which will appear in the left-hand column. Or you can also access your NCBI My Bibliography by selecting your username in the top right corner and then choose Publications from the drop-down menu, which will go directly to My Bibliography. When you are adding citations to your My Bibliography, we always recommend pulling article information from PubMed if it is available. But if it is not in PubMed, you can add it, any publication or citation information using an RIS file, which is a standard file for citations that you can export from any citation manager, such as EndNote or Mendeley, or other database such as Scopus. Or as a last resort, you can always enter information manually. All three of these options are available under the Add Citation drop-down menu in your My Bibliography page. I find that I need to enter citations manually for most items that are not journal articles. So this is a great way to add any poster or conference presentations, data set, software, or any other research product you may have. If you are looking for a place to publish your posters, presentation slides, or data sets, we do have an institutional repository here at UMass called eScholarship at UMass Chan, where you can publish any of the work done here at UMass Medical School and receive a DOI to add to your citation, to put into your CV or your biosketch. These materials in eScholarship at UMass Chan are also discoverable on Google Scholar. So if you track anything like your H index, they can have an impact there. Once you have received your fellowship or grant, the My Bibliography page can also be used to make sure that your papers are making their way into PubMed Central to become compliant with the NIH public access policy. Feel free to reach out to the librarians here with any questions once you get to this point. So another source of information that SciENcv can pull from is ORCID. So quick show of, thumbs up or a raised hands. Does everybody have an ORCID ID already set up? All right, some positives. This is a fairly common and important identifier. And to enable this connection, your ORCID ID must be linked to your NCBI account, which is done in the same way as we saw earlier with the ERA Commons under your account settings and linking those accounts. There are changes coming to the NIH Biosketch after May 25th of 2025, which will include requiring the inclusion of an ORCID. So signing up now is only to your benefit, and using the same common forms as the NSF and a new NIH biographical sketch supplement. So the two recommended preparation steps before these changes will take effect next year are to make sure you have an ORCID and link it to your ERA Commons personal profile, and become familiar with the SciENcv tool, which we are doing today by attending this workshop, so that you are ready to implement the changes when they go into effect. Okay, so we will have a few activities during this workshop today to get you started on your primary biosketch. So here in this first one, please add 1 or 2 publications into your My Bibliography. We'll give about 3 to 5 minutes. And if you are able to do that and all set, just throw a thumbs up and we will know when it is time to move on.
We also had a question earlier about can an administrative ERA Commons account be linked to NCBI? And the answer to that is yes. Both Leah and I have administrative ERA Commons accounts, and as you have seen through our screenshots, have successfully linked them to our NCBI accounts.
Okay, if you are still having any issues with adding anything to your My Bibliography, feel free to let us know in the chat, but we will move on just in the interest of time. So we've talked about SciENcv and why we are using SciENcv. Well, other than the fact that it will soon be required across the board, SciENcv helps generate compliant biosketches by adhering to all of the required formatting and integrating with the My Bibliography, ERA Commons, other resources such as ORCID, in order to sort of facilitate the easiest and most accurate version of a biosketch. So to access SciENcv, if you go back to your NCBI dashboard, the SciENcv box is generally in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can click on Manage SciENcv or Create Biosketch if this is the first biosketch that you are creating, which will then bring you to this is what the new version of the SciENcv tool looks like. So once you have created your first biosketch, or if you have multiple versions, they will appear in a list as so. But today we are going to go ahead and create a new biosketch by clicking on the New Document button. So whenever you are creating a new biosketch, we always recommend pre-populating as much as possible. And that's why we do recommend creating and keeping a primary biosketch that can act as a template so that you do not need to repeat steps such as adding your basic information or add your education information. And this is the step where you can also pull information from either ERA Commons or ORCID if your account is linked. The example that we will be showing in the screenshots today uses the NIH Fellowship Biosketch template and the NSF template. So they are slightly different, and we will be going through some of the different sections involved. But as you can see, you can choose either an external source of information or an existing document if you have already created a primary biosketch. Okay, so if you haven't already, please go ahead and create a blank biosketch in whatever format makes the most sense to you. And we will give you a couple of minutes just to get that started and make sure all of your account information is importing correctly. Okay, so we are going to keep going. And now what we are going to start with is looking at the different elements within the biosketch itself. So here, this is the template for the standard NIH biosketch. It has an education and training section at the top, and then sections A through C, covering your personal statement, your positions and scientific appointments and honors, and contributions to science. The NIH Fellows biosketch is similar, but it does have one extra section. So it has A, B, and C, which is your personal statement with up to 4 publications or research products, including career goals. Section B for your positions, scientific appointments, and honors are including professional memberships or other experience. Section C, your contributions to science. So this can include anything such as research experience from high school or undergraduate years, professional experience, graduate research, and then in section D, which is only on this fellowship biosketch, is Scholastic Performance. So this is a list by institution and year of all undergraduate and graduate courses with your grades. For those who have already graduated for postdocs, it is only graduate classes. And the SciENcv tool mirrors all of these structures in its sort of editable forms. The NSF biographical sketch has 4 sections that are slightly different. It starts with a section of identifying information, including your organization and affiliations and location. And then section A is your professional preparation. This is any post-secondary education and training. Section B is appointments and positions. Section C is where you can list up to 5 research products related to the proposed project and up to 5 other significant products. Finally, there is a certification required once the biosketch is complete, which cannot be done by any delegate. So if you are somebody who prepares a biosketch on behalf of somebody else, the certification will need to be done by the researcher themselves. And then synergistic activities and current and pending other support forms are separate documents that are not being covered in this workshop, but are available within SciENcv. So we are going to discuss the sections for both the NIH and NSF biosketches a little bit out of order today, but there is a method to the madness. If you've ever already written these like articles or article drafts, you probably know that rather than writing from start to finish, it can often be a lot easier to write it section by section. Generally, we find it easier to get things like the methods and the data reporting done first before going back and working on the sort of meatier discussion or introduction sections. And the biosketch can be the same way. So we can start with getting the facts written down first, and then work on the sections that might take a little bit more effort and thought. So first, we will start on education and training. This is NSF section A, and NIH sections D and B. then NSF Section B, and move on then to NSF Section C and NIH Sections A and C. So the first thing on an NIH biosketch that you will run into is the biosketch header. This is where you will fill in all of your personal information, such as the full name as it appears on your grant proposal, your email, your address, and where your linked accounts should appear. So here's where it will say if you have an ERA Commons account or your ORCID ID. First up on the NSF biosketch is your identifying information section with organization and location. So to edit this, look for the little edit link next to the section title. And if you imported this information from an existing source, like a previously created biosketch or an ORCID profile, and there is information missing, you will see error notices next to this section. And generally, they look like little red exclamation points to tell you that there is an error or there's something missing. So if you click on the little edit icon, this is the pop-up window that will show up, and you can change any of the information and how it is displaying. So for the education and training sections for either of the different NSF or NIH biosketches, you'll need to list all of your post-secondary education, beginning with your baccalaureate or their initial professional education, and include postdoctoral, residency, and clinical fellowship training as applicable, listing each one separately. So for NIH, this list is in chronological order, and for NSF, it is in reverse chronological order. For each entry, you will be asked to provide the name and location of the institution, the degree received, if applicable, the month and year or expected end date, and then field of study. And a lot of this information may pre-populate if you have your ERA Commons or ORCID linked, if they are in your NCBI account. But if anything comes in incorrectly or incomplete, you can always use the edit icon to update the information. You can also add it directly for NIH grants, and as many degrees and training as you need to add, you can use the add another degree for the training, for the save and add another entry for each one. So here you can see this one is in chronological. And then in the NSF version, you can use the add professional preparation link at the top of the table, and then add the information that is required manually. And this is what that looks like. So for NIH fellowship grants, the next section that we will talk about is Section D, Scholastic Performance. For this, you will need a copy of your transcripts. For graduate students, you will need all of your undergraduate and graduate courses with the year, institution, and grade for each course. Postdocs will need their graduate scientific or professional courses with the year, institution, and grade. If you have not added any degrees into your education and training, you will not be able to start this section, which is why we do recommend beginning with the education and training before you move on to Scholastic Performance. So once the degrees are added, you can add your grades associated using the add course link for each of the different degrees.
Now, for NIH Section B, positions and honors, appointments and honors, you're going to want to list all current professional positions and scientific appointments, both paid and unpaid, full-time, part-time, or voluntary honorary, and list any honors. And that could mean scholarships, fellowships, awards, things like this. Did you get inducted into an honor society during your undergrad? That would count here. And this is another section where information can be pulled from ERA Commons or manually added. For the NSF section B, appointments and positions, very similar. However, you're going to list in reverse chronological order all professional positions and scientific appointments, both paid and unpaid, full-time, part-time, voluntary, and honorary. And you only need to identify uh, positions, all domestic and foreign professional appointments outside the primary organization for up to 3 years prior to the date of proposal if you're short on space. And similar to previous sections, other sections for the NSF, this might be imported from an outside source such as ORCID if you use an outside source when creating your biosketch. And if any appointments or positions are missing, you can add them using the link at the top of the table. And it looks like I need to update some of my past positions here because of the little exclamation mark that's appearing beside some of them. So in this case, I need to add country and state. If you go to the next slide, you can see how this error message appears. And if you are importing creating your NSF Biosketch, or when the NIH transfers to this new format, when you're importing from an existing NIH Biosketch, it's likely that you're going to need to add country and state for all of your positions, as well as all your education, because that's not a current requirement for NIH Biosketches, but it is required in the new common forms. Um, and so an unfilled version of the window is also what you would see if you're filling a brand new one from blank. So now we're going to take about 5 minutes to start filling out the education position, scientific appointments, and honors section. And I'm going to take a look at the questions in the chat. So we have a question about fixing formatting in ORCID or ERA Commons, about saving, and we're going to get to that in a minute. So we'll hold on to that question. And a question about not being able to see a section D. So section D will only appear if you have chosen the Fellowship Biosketch template as the biosketch that you're filling out. So to make sure that if you go to the top of your biosketch document, and I'm going to just take over the screen sharing to show this. If you look at the header for your biosketch, it will have the profile type. So if you has NIH Fellowship Biosketch, it's going to have that section D. If it's just a regular biosketch, it will not. But don't worry, if you've started your work on a regular biosketch, as Leah was showing earlier, you can easily import that into a fellowship biosketch by using it as the source document for your fellowship biosketch. And I answered a question in the chat a little bit earlier about the format of the PMCID in citations in SciENcv. So in SciENcv, the formatting is PubMed Central ID : PMC number. Whereas if you were using a Word document or template of Biosketch, you may have used simply PMCID : or just PMCID PMC number, and that is fine as of now. But once they start requiring SciENcv, that information is going to have to be in SciENcv, and we'll follow the SciENcv format. All right. Feel free to keep working on that now as we go through the rest of the sections or save it till afterwards. But we have a few more sections to go through before the end. So we're going to move on. So our next section for the NSF is NSF Section C, which is products. And you can list up to 10, with 5 being closely related to the proposed project and up to 5 other significant products, whether or not they're related to the proposed project, that demonstrate your qualifications to carry out the project as proposed. And if you're short on space and have products with multiple authors, you can list the first couple of authors, then use et al. In lieu of including the rest of the author names. So getting back to that question about shortening the author names and making edits. But first, what counts as a research product? So the most important criteria of a research product is that it must be citable and accessible. So it can't be, a piece of software that you just have on your computer. It has to be, if it's software, it has to be deposited in some place like GitHub, or another repository or somewhere people can access it. And there's a wide range of products to choose from, technologies, inventions, data, uh, audio or video, instruments, equipment, etc. Full list on the screen here. And for each product, you are required to include the authors, title, date of publication, a website URL, or other persistent identifier, and other relevant citation information. So for publication, title of the journal or the book, volume, issues, pages, etc. And if an item doesn't have some of the items specified above, you enter NA. And to add products, uh, similar to the other sections of the NSF Biosketch, you will click on Edit Products, and then it will bring you to the option to be able to add products using My Bibliography or ORCID by checking off the box that's next to them and then pressing Continue. And then you do have the option to reorder NSF project by dragging and dropping them into the order that you want them, whether that you want them to be ordered chronologically or by importance to the grant that you're applying for. And getting to that question about the editing, the citations. So for editing citations, you can do it either in My Bibliography or um, within ORCID, which is going to be directly within SciENcv. So for My Bibliography, you will edit the citation in My Bibliography by going to the authors here and adding an author that is et al. Um, and if you are pulling this, you'll have to edit if if the article was in PubMed, you cannot edit the article if it's being pulled from PubMed because that citation information is static. But to make those edits, you will need to create a sort of manual article to make those edits in it. For articles that you're pulling in from ORCID, there will be this little edit authors link that appears next to the article or product name. And from there, it'll pop out a window where you can edit the author names and add an et al. At the end. All right, back to the NIH. So now that we're got sort of the more, some might say tedious or routine information out of the way, now to get more into the in-depth stuff. So the first being the personal statement. What should you include? So you want to briefly describe why you are well suited for the role in this project, so aspects of your training, previous experimental work, technical expertise, etc., as well as explain impediments to past productivity if you would like. You can also we recommend tailoring the personal statement to the application. So mentioning the grant application and your collaborators, discussing ongoing and completed research projects from the last 3 years, specific contributions to science that you're not planning to include in Section C, as well as you can mention past research support, such as grants and awards completed less than 3 years ago, and identify up to 4 publications or research products that highlight your experience and qualifications. For the NIH, what counts as a research product? Well, anything on this list. And I, for the preprints, similar to the NSF, it has to be deposited somewhere. So whether that's bioRxiv, medRxiv, or eScholarship at UMass Chan. What's not allowed on in a personal statement are figures and tables, charts, URLs and links from research products, and citing a manuscript that's under review. It's okay to mention it in the textual section, but it can't be one of your citations. And this actually goes, these things that are not allowed anywhere in your biosketch. The exception being you can have a link to your full My Bibliography in Section C, which we will cover. So as I was sort of alluding to, the personal statement has 2 sections. You have a textual section where you will write a more descriptive paragraph or paragraphs, and then add your 4 citations below, using from My Bibliography or from ORCID. And for that brings us to Section C. And there's a question in the chat about preprints being okay, and yes, they are okay. They are definitely okay. For Section C, you're able to describe up to 5 of your most significant contributions to science. And for each, you want to summarize the historical background that frames the scientific problem, central findings, the influence of findings on your field or application to health or technology, and your role in the work described. Each contribution should be no longer than half a page, including citations. And for this, again, you can list up to 4 key publications or non-publication research products with each contributions, and citations can be reused between different contributions to science, as well as between your contribution to science and your personal statement. And you, as I mentioned, you have the option to include a .gov link to list your published works, in this case, My Bibliography, and no other links allowed. And while as a trainee, this might sound hard, keep in mind that you can mention previous projects you worked on, collaborations, management. Was there a project that you took the lead on? Have you mentored students, etc.? You can use different metrics as well to tell your story, such as citation counts and downloads. And the important thing is that you want to provide context and explanation to make these metrics meaningful. What does this mean? So if your work was mentioned in a policy, explain what the policy was for, and describe how your work was discussed. For example, this work was described as a breakthrough study on ALS by a prominent researcher. You could also highlight comments from news stories, mentions of policies or patents, or once you're running your own lab, the work of students you've mentored. Writing your biosketch as a new researcher, here are some tips you should keep in mind. Consider it your reviewer, and avoid using excessive jargon. Use a humble tone and include only appropriate information. Remember that 2 or 3 solid significant contributions or activities are preferable over more mediocre contributions. Also consider discussing why your contributions will be important. Also consider all contributions you've made, such as your doctoral thesis or mentoring. If you don't have any publications, describe your efforts on other people's papers and projects. So for example, you use this method, I conducted the literature review for this paper, I care for all animals in this lab. And in general, reviewers base their expectations for contributions on the seniority of the person filling out the biosketch. They're not going to expect the same number of contributions from a grad student who is new to their research topic and a full professor whose knowledge of a research topic has expanded to the point where crazy things happen. So some other general tips, remember to use first person, use headings for each contribution. You can do that using the markup language, using 2 stars on either side of your heading to make it bold. Um, you can remember to clearly summarize your role in the contribution and present your contributions clearly and logically, whether that's uh, career trajectory, chronologically, importance to the grant you're applying for, and relevance to proposed research, as well as get input from mentors and colleagues. So to add contributions to science, similar to the personal statement, you have both a narrative descriptive section that you open using the edit link, and then you add your citations using that select citations link. And you can add a new contribution tab by using the add another contribution link. So once you have finished your biosketch, you'll want to export it. We recommend exporting as PDF, which is the format it needs to be submitted in, because part of the benefit of SciENcv is that it does all the formatting for you, which can get lost if you export it as a Word and continue editing. You can have multiple biosketches within SciENcv and reuse information that you've added to your primary biosketch. For NSF Biosketches, you will always need to export your biographical sketch as a PDF, and please do not convert it to Word. It will lose the correct formatting and will not meet the NSF requirement of being completed in SciENcv. The PDF is what must be submitted with the application. You can save multiple biographical sketches for NSF as well in SciENcv, and again, with keeping a primary biosketch is recommended. For NSF, there is also additional step that when you download the PDF, you will be asked to certify the biosketch, and this can only be completed by the researcher and cannot be delegated. The download will not be available until all errors are addressed and sections are complete. So if you're not seeing that download button lit up, go back through the biosketch and make sure that there's no red exclamation marks and all sections are filled out. So on the next couple slides, we have provided some handy-dandy checklists for both the NIH as well as the NSF for you to refer to. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to James to go over the Office of Sponsored Programs checklists that they go through when they review biosketches.
Thank you, Tess. Can everyone hear me, first of all?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Sorry, I'm having some technical issues, so I apologize. Just bear with me as I kind of get us through just a couple resources. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to, and I'm also not having any luck with my video on Zoom this afternoon, so I apologize that you can't see me. But I do have my name is James Warren Deck. I'm from the Office of Sponsored Programs. I am a senior sponsored programs administrator in the Office of Sponsored Programs, and I've been here at UMass Chan for about 2 years. I came to UMass Chan from UMass Amherst, where I worked in the central pre-award office there for about 6 or 7 years. So I've been doing this for a while. I've reviewed a lot of biosketches. And I just want to share with you some review tools that we use in OSP to review biosketches. And I hope that they'll be helpful for faculty, for graduate students, as well as department staff, especially new department staff in reviewing and putting together biosketches. So, and I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So this is our biosketch review checklist. And a lot of the information that's on this checklist has already been covered by Tess. Oops, there we go. Apologies. There we go. A lot of this information has already been covered by Tess and Leah, so I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I am going to hit on some of the a couple of things that weren't covered quite as in depth. So in terms of formatting, there are some NIH guidelines that we have to keep in mind for our biosketches. So for one, it should be standard 8.5 by 11 paper size. For fonts, we should be using 0.11 or larger. There are some suggested fonts here, Arial, Georgia, etc. You can use any font that is legible. Obviously, that's a bit subjective, but these are the 4 that NIH suggests. In addition, black ink most of the time for the font color so that it's legible and readable. And for your margins, they should be 5.5 or 0.5 or larger on each side of the paper. I also want to add to this a note on URLs. We shouldn't be using URLs within the Biosketch with the exception of the publications link at the very end, which we will talk about a little bit more in just a second. But this is a great resource, and it does go through all of the various other sections line by line. Again, I'm not going to cover them all because we've just talked about them. One last thing that I do want to note on here is the PMCIDs, which for any NIH-funded publication produced after April 2008, you should have a PMCID within the citation. So that's our checklist, which I believe is going to be shared with all of you and is also on our website. And I also want to take a minute to just quickly go through a sample biosketch where we're going to just quickly take a look at some of the problems that most often come up when we in OSP are reviewing a biosketch. So I have this sample here, and I'm just going to quickly point out a few of the most common issues that we see in OSP. So number 1 is a missing ERA Commons ID. And especially when you are an investigator on a subaward and we're sending our proposal documents to another institution to be incorporated into their proposal, it's really important to include your ERA Commons ID here. It's part of the guidelines, so it should be there regardless. But if we send our biosketch over to the other institution, they put the proposal together and it's the day of the deadline, they go to hit submit and your Commons ID is not in there, it can really be a struggle for the administrator at the other institution to get that information. And we can't submit the proposal if all the key personnel don't have their Commons ID. So it's really important that we include that. The next thing that I want to highlight in here is down here in the personal statement where you will list out some ongoing and recently completed projects. So one of the issues we see in this section is projects like this first one here that is it's more than 3 years old, right? So they only want to see projects that are currently going on and those which have ended within the last 3 years. So we would want to drop this one from this biosketch. Another issue that we see in this section quite a bit is down here, listing out the amount of the award per year or the effort per year. That's information that should really be in the other support document, right? And NIH doesn't ask for other support at time of application for a reason, because that information isn't part of the scientific review, right? You'd submit your other support document at JIT after it's already been through the scientific review process. So we'd want to drop that information from this section as well. Down here where we have our citations, our research products, it's very common to see, more than the 4 that are allowed. You get 4 citations per the personal statement, as well as each of the 5 contributions to science. And as you can see in this biosketch, we have 3 contributions. And I think what often trips people up is they think, well, I'm only doing 3 instead of 5, so I can put some of the extras into my first contribution to science. It should be a maximum of 4 per contribution to science. So we drop this one here, these last 2 here in the first contribution, and we drop the extra 1 from the personal statement. And lastly, we're going to scroll down here and just talk about the URLs. Like I had just mentioned, we should only have 1 URL in our biosketch, and that's the link to your complete list of published works. And it should be spelled out like this one down here. And it should also be to a .gov address like this final one here. We can't include Google Scholar. It shouldn't be a hyperlink, right? Because if you include a hyperlink, when your application is submitted to NIH, it gets flattened and they're not going to be able to see the link to all of your lovely publications anyway. So it's very important that it be spelled out and it be to a .gov address. And I also often will see people include a hyperlink within the citation or a URL within the citation or a URL to the PMCID. And that also is not necessary here in item C here. So those can be dropped as well. And that's what I have for some of the common mistakes at review with Biosketches. I did just want to take a minute to just do a couple of plugs before I give it back to Tess and Leah to wrap up. I know that we've talked about SciENcv. SciENcv will be a requirement for NIH Biosketches and other support documents in 2025. And it's really, really important that our PIs begin the process of utilizing SciENcv as soon as possible. It is a little bit of time investment up front, right? You've got to take some time and energy to learn how to use it, to maybe put some information in there, but it's going to save you as PIs, as department staff, as well as OSP, a lot of time and energy downstream. You're not going to be struggling with the formatting. You're not going to be getting as many review items from OSP about, what might be off in a biosketch. You're not going to be struggling with like the conversion from Word to PDF or anything like that. We just had a big deadline yesterday, and I had a PI who sent me their research strategy, and they had converted it from Word to PDF, and all the figures were misaligned, the captions were off, and it was suddenly 13 pages instead of 12. So those issues happen as well. And SciENcv is going to save a lot of time and make biosketches and eventually other support documents almost an on-demand thing, right? If you're keeping your achievements, your positions, your publications up to date, it's going to be really easy to get your biosketches immediately, which is going to be really helpful to everyone. So please get started on that early. We don't want everyone rushing at that first big deadline where it does become a requirement. And I just have three quick resources that I just want to quickly plug before I finish up. OSP office hours are every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. All are welcome to come and ask any questions that they have, whether they're related to biosketches or not. Please utilize the time. It's generally mostly department staff that come, but we do have PIs that come. There's a link at the end of the slide deck to our intranet page, and on that page is a link to the office hours. The link doesn't change. It's a Teams meeting link, and it doesn't change from week to week, from Tuesday to Thursday or anything like that. So you can bookmark it, put it on your calendar, and come when you have questions. The second thing is the research administration update, which is every Thursday, the second Thursday of every month at 1 p.m. And that is this coming Thursday. And this is where OSP, grant accounting, and cost analysis and compliance present internal changes. When there are changes in biosketch formatting, we present those. We've talked about SciENcv, I think, every day, every RAL for like a year now. So please come to that. We send out an agenda usually a day or two in advance, and we send out the link the morning of the RAU for that. And then lastly, again, on the OSP intranet page, when you first get to our intranet page, there's a big spreadsheet with all of the academic departments listed on it, and the OSP administrator who handles that specific department. So you can find who your OSP administrator is, and you can always reach out to them with any questions, biosketch related or not. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us as well with any questions that you may have. And I just want to thank Tess and Leah again for putting this together and for having me, and I will turn it back over to them.
Thank you so much, James. I just pulled up the Office of Sponsored Programs intranet site, so you can take a look at the portfolio distribution there. And just
that link is in the chat.
That link is in the chat. Thank you so much, Leah. So just to finish us off here, just a few extra helpful links are going to be available in the slide. If you have questions as well for our students and postdocs that are on the call, if you do need help with your biosketch and CV, we always recommend reaching out to the Center for Biomedical Career Development, and Nadia can help you get set up with an appointment with them. And we do have another upcoming seminar for this calendar year, Where to Publish, Finding and Evaluating Journals. That's going to be on November 19th from 12 to 1 on Zoom. You can already register for that on our seminar series page, where this recording and slides are going to be posted, and our past recordings and slides are located. So Leah will drop the link into the chat as well for that. And with that, we are happy to take questions. I'm going to turn off the recording.